Hello, today we're going to go over our warm-up to review for Chapter 2. So if you're watching, we should have already tried all of the problems and come up with some sort of an answer. Please don't watch us until you have tried every single problem. Once you've tried it, then you can come back and watch and see the answers and hear an explanation. Feel free to fast forward to whatever problem that you need to hear the explanation for. You don't have to watch the whole video. So for problem number 1, we would first get y by itself. So we would subtract 6x in order to graph this and then also identify the slope. So we would get negative 6x minus 12, and we would divide everything by negative 3. So in slope-intercept form, we should have y equals 2x plus 4, which means for your graph, you should start at 4, and then you should have a slope then of 2, so up to right 1. So here's our graph. Our slope, we just talked about being 2. Our x-intercept, you always are going to write this as your x value, comma 0, or some number, comma 0. So looking at your graph, the x-intercept happens where your graph crosses the x-axis at negative 2, comma 0, whereas your y-intercept is always going to be 0, comma some number. This is going to be where your graph crosses the y-axis, so 0, comma 4. Part D is based off of the same line there. So we want to write the equation of the line that's perpendicular, which means your slopes should be opposite reciprocals. So your original slope was 2, which means the slope of the perpendicular is going to, since it was a positive, become negative and become 1/2. And I have to cross through the point 0, comma negative 6. Now you have two options with this. First, you can notice that that is your y-intercept, and you can go straight into slope-intercept form. But if you don't, if you want to start in point slope and then go to slope-intercept, that's okay too. I'm going to show that just in case you didn't notice that it was the y-intercept. So it would be y minus y1 equals our new slope of negative 1/2 times x minus x1. We would go ahead and distribute to get negative 1/2 x and then subtract 6. So the equation of the line should be y equals negative 1/2 x minus 6, which again you could have gotten to just by plugging in your new slope and your new y-intercept. Then it also asks us to graph this. So we should start down at negative 6 and go down 1, right 2. And as we're looking at this, our lines should appear perpendicular, meaning they should intersect at a 90-degree angle. If it looks a little bit off, that could be your clue that something went wrong. For number 2, to get this into standard form, we first need to move the x to the other side. We would get negative 3/4 x plus y equals 1/2. We then would need to get rid of all of our fractions. So we have two different denominators, a 4 and a 2. If you imagine trying to find common denominators for this, a common denominator between both of those would be 4. So we're going to multiply the 4 in. This first 4 is going to cancel out the denominator there. Oh, there's also a negative sign. So let's go ahead and get rid of that negative sign as well. So my new a value is a positive 3 in front of the x. Then we're going to distribute to the y, so this is going to become minus 4y. And finally, we're going to distribute to the 1/2, so we're doing negative 4 times 1/2. So you can multiply the numerators and the denominators and then divide. So your c value should be negative 2. For number 3, finding the slope, here our equation here is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And because it's a negative 7 that you're subtracting, it does become a positive, which means there's a 0 in the denominator, and this slope would be undefined. Now, if you visualize something that's an undefined slope, we know it's going to be a vertical line. And because it's a vertical line, it is going to be x equals some number for our equation. Looking at our points, both of these have an x value of negative 7, so the equation that goes through both of those would be x equals negative 7. Okay, so for number 4, we want to write the equation of the line parallel. So the slopes here are equal if your lines are parallel. So given this first line, we're going to go ahead and we're going to identify what your slope is by getting y by itself. And we're going to use this equation only for the slope. So the slope of this line is 5/2, which means the slope of a line parallel to it should also be 5/2. After we identify that, then we really don't need this line anymore. Now we know that this has to go through this point, and we want to write it in slope-intercept form, but we have to start in point-slope form to get to slope-intercept form. So it's going to be y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. At which point we can distribute. We would get y plus 3 equals 5/2 x minus 25/2. And then we would subtract 3 from both sides, and we would get as our final answer y equals 5/2 x minus 31/2 as our y-intercept. So we're going to try a similar problem, but now we're changing it to perpendicular, which means the slopes here are opposite reciprocals. So in order to do this, I need to know the slope of the line that they give us, but the problem is it's not in the right form. If this looked like y equals mx plus b, I could go ahead and find my slope. So I have to make this line look like that. So first I'm going to move my 9x to the other side. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to divide everything by -4. And a negative divided by a negative becomes a positive. So even though my y-intercept is a weird fraction there, I still have a slope of this line being 9/4, which means the slope of the perpendicular, I'm going to change it to a negative sign, and I'm going to flip my fraction to become -4/9. So to go to standard form, I first have to take point slope form to slope intercept form, then I can go to standard. So we're going to start this trek by starting in point slope form. We're going to do y minus y1 equals our slope of -4/9 times x minus x1. Moving along to slope intercept form, we have to distribute. So we get -4/9 x plus 8/9. And then we're going to get y by itself. So this would become 17/9. Now we want to take this and go to standard form. So we have to move the x and the y to the same side. So 4/9x plus y equals 17/9. And then our final step here is to make sure that there are no fractions. So we're going to multiply everything by 9. When I multiply the first fraction, it actually cancels out the denominator. So my a value is just 4x. I'm going to distribute the 9 to the y. And then I'm also going to distribute the 9 to the 17/9, which once again cancels out that denominator. So my final answer in standard form is 4x plus 9y equals 17. So now we're going to try a couple of the word problems on the back side of your warm-up. Number 6, you had an airplane. It's starting 30,000 feet above the ground. This right here represents your y-intercept because it's your initial amount. It is descending at the rate of 2,000 feet per minute, which means it's decreasing by 2,000, and that's your slope. So our equation, it says write an equation to model the situation. We can just go right into slope-intercept form. So y equals -2,000 x plus 30,000. Part 2 says use your equation to find the altitude after 5 minutes. Now our minutes here is our x value. So we can go ahead and we can plug in 5 for x, and then calculate our new altitude. So after 5 minutes, the altitude is going to be 20,000 feet. Okay. So number 7, we have to take a look at what we are given for this one. After 2 days, Will has 120 messages on his phone. That is a specific coordinate point. 2 days in, Will has 120. Every day he gets 15 more. That is our slope. We want to write an equation to model this situation, and since it doesn't say, that means we can keep it nice and just start in point slope form and leave it there. So y minus 120 equals a slope of 15 times x minus 2. And it didn't tell me to go to a specific form, so I can leave it in any generic form. Now it says how many text messages will he have after 22 days? 22 days is your x value. So in order to do this one, we can plug in 22 for x. And we can then solve this for y. So we would get y minus 120 equals 15 times 20. So we would get y minus 120 equals 300. So y would equal 420. So he would have 420 text messages if that rate kept up for 22 days. So thank you for listening to whatever parts you needed for your warm-up. I hope everything is going well for you, and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.